Well, those deals signed between Malaysia and Singapore for the SEZ project have boosted market confidence in Malaysia. However, one advisory firm notes that investors are still cautious due to a lack of details. While at least one grocery store is getting more supplier inquiries, other businesses want clarity on the origins of goods. This comes as US President-elect Donald Trump returns to office later this month.
We know that after the administration of Trump 2.0, the tariff will be one of the trending word again globally. And I think ASEAN, most of the countries will be imposed tariff also, except for Singapore, because Singapore currently has a trade deficit with US. So whether or not under this SEZ context, is there any flexibility or relaxation on the COO? I think it's the main observation points of all the investors.
Some of the supplier, like for example from Sarawak itself, to come over, bring their product and want to have it here. Because why? This is the opportunity for them to create the branding. By having it here, because why? Johor is very near to Singapore, and then at the same time, a lot of Singaporean here. So it means that they already have this product for the two countries already.
Well, let's get the pulse on how the business community is reacting to this with the Chief Executive of the Singapore Business Federation, Kok Ping Soon. Welcome, Mr. Kok.
You.
Now, you heard there what some of the interviewees were saying. Give me the details, but overall, when you have taken the pulse of the business communities out there, what are they telling you?
Well, I think businesses have been looking forward to the conclusion of this agreement since the MOU was signed in January. The potential of Johor-Singapore as an economic integrated region has always been there. But truth be told, the issues and challenges have also always been there. Businesses have always complained, about the difficulty in moving people and goods between the two countries. They've complained about the lack of talent. They've complained about the bureaucracy they have to work with in order to set up business in Johor. So the conclusion of this agreement, at least based on what we hear, heralds, we hope. I suppose businesses, I would say, will be cautiously hopeful that it will herald a new era of economic integration between the two countries, anchored on complementarity, collaboration, and commitment. And based on what we hear, there's a first batch of early initiatives that have been announced, and we think it will go some way to help address some of the pain points. We hear about the setup of an Invest Malaysia Facilitation Centre, which is intended to be a one-stop shop to expedite approvals and streamline processes. We also hear about the potential of simplified custom clearance to facilitate land transshipment. We also hear about potential collaboration, between the vocational institutes in Singapore as well as their counterparts in Malaysia. So all this sounds positive. And if there's a measure of interest, before the leaders' retreat, we had actually planned to bring a business mission to Johor in mid-February. And following today's announcement, the number of companies that's interested spiked up to about 60 companies. And in fact, 90% of them are SMEs, and 50% of them are actually thinking of investing out of Singapore for the first time. So I think they are cautiously hopeful.
That is very telling, just 60 and the spike that you mentioned. And again, cautiously optimistic is the key word. But, obviously the potential, it can be seen. So I'm wondering, how can Singapore businesses grow with the SEZ that perhaps they couldn't without it?
Well, I think if these initiatives are successfully implemented, it will actually mean that businesses now have what we call integrated economic region to overcome many of the inherent constraints that Singapore has. Think about it, that total area that they have landmarked is 5 times the size of Singapore. What that translates to is increased land mass, increased manpower, increased market, to overcome essentially the challenges that we have. So now businesses will essentially have the best of both economies. They can tap onto the lower operating costs in JB, in Johor, at the same time leverage on the better connectivity Singapore has, the headquarters functions we have, and the deeper financial markets that we have. So I think for businesses to grow with SEZ, they have to move away from what I call a wait-and-see attitude to one that maybe I call act and test. Engage the authorities now with their business plan to see what works and what doesn't, and what is more attractive to them, and what is probably not suitable for SEZ.
All right, let's slice this a bit further. We're calling them companies, but I want to go into detail. What kind of companies? For example, the 60 that have put their hand up. What kind of companies have expressed a desire and a benefit that they could see from SEZ, and what industries should be applying?
Again, following the announcement, we hear that there are about 11 economic sectors that have been identified. They are very broad and very wide-ranging, covering from manufacturing, logistics, food security, tourism, education, healthcare, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think the choice of this industry reflects, again, the complementarity between the two economies, and provide an opportunity not just for expansion of businesses from Singapore, but as a possible location to attract new investments. The sort of companies that have indicated interest to join us for the trip are business services company.
Okay.
We have supply chain companies. We have engineering services company. And what they are thinking of is really to find opportunities for them to expand some of the some of the more labor-intensive operations over there. So, for example, in the aircraft manufacturing and aircraft MRO businesses, I think some of those activities are better done there, while the headquarters functions remain in Singapore.
All right, so really a wide spectrum over there. Yet we have heard, and you alluded to this earlier, that some businesses do see the risk, even anticipate some challenges in terms of the SEZ. And you yourself said they've always been there. Can you explain a bit more?
Well, there's always the risk of how much of what is being announced will actually get implemented on the ground. And if it's get implemented on the ground, how long it will take before it actually materializes. And truth be told, the early initiatives are bold and it's welcome, but it takes much more than QR code clearance or removing of permits, to streamline processes, to improve the flow of people and goods between the two countries. To really solve the issue, you need heavy infrastructure investments to expand the capacity. You need to talk about system integration between the two countries, data flows between the two countries. And I think all these are areas that we hear are being explored. It's not within the first early initiatives, but are things that are being studied. So we need to see how these things pan out.
Yeah, devil in the details, as they say. Final question to you. Is there a risk that multinationals would, in some ways, overlook Singapore and set their eyes, directly on the SEZ as a business option? And how might that affect our competitiveness, if at all?
Well, to be sure and to be candid, MNCs are already not looking at Singapore for certain investments. So I think the beauty of JSSEZ is that the competition is not between Johor and Singapore, but really Johor and Singapore against the other many competitive destinations. They're all eyeing a slice of the investment arising from all the global supply chain diversification. So I think the beauty of this is that we are now able to attract new investments together by leveraging, as I've said, lower competitive cost of JB with the better connectivity and HQ services in Singapore. The beauty here is that there is indeed that potential, for us to be, I think in Malay they call it lebih hebat bersama, greater together, operating under two countries but one ecosystems.
Yeah. Wise of you to brush up on your Malay and your Bahasa. Thank you so much for joining us and your thoughts as well. I've been speaking there with Mr. Kok Ping Soon from the BSF.